All right, it says I'm live. So here we are, pre-AP students. We're going to combine chapters 18 and 19, just through that. So you should have your study guide that I shared with you in your Google Classroom account. It looks like this. It says 10th Abush, chapter 19 study guide. And even though it says chapter 19, it also includes 18 on it. So it's just condensed into one guide here. So again, I need you to get this out or do whatever you do, because we're going to cover some of this today, starting with the Wilmot Proviso and what this looks like. The 1850s, since the end of the American Revolution, slavery and states' rights have been an issue, and there's been flare-ups like the Missouri Compromise of 1820, nullification 1831. We've had other issues that are going to come along, but it's in the 1850s, from 1850 to 1860, that you're going to see the greatest acceleration. And I call it the decade that sparked civil war here in the United States, because at some point you just can't compromise anymore. And the nation is becoming more and more divided over the issue of slavery or the abolition of slavery. So let's start with the first thing there, the Wilmot Proviso of 1846. If you remember from your last thing, we had a war with Mexico, and we won and acquired all this new territory. Now, going into the war, there was people that were concerned, David Wilmot being one of them, who was anti-slavery, that if we win, which we probably will, what do we do with this territory and what does it look like in regards to slavery? Because if you remember, the Missouri Compromise of 1820 took the 36-degree 30-minute line just to the Louisiana territory, and slavery could exist below it, but not above it. And remember, the 36-degree 30-minute line is the present-day border between Texas and the Oklahoma Panhandle and the Missouri-Arkansas border. It did not include what is now Arizona, New Mexico, California, all this territory out there that had belonged to Mexico and Spain when the Missouri Compromise of 1820 had been passed. And so now with this territory possibly being acquired by the United States in conflict with Mexico, what do we do? So David Wilmot put forth a piece of legislation there that you see, the Wilmot Proviso of 1846, that said, it was a piece of legislation that said slavery will not be allowed to exist in any territory acquired from this conflict with Mexico. So in any territory that was acquired from Mexico, slavery would not be allowed to exist. It didn't pass. It didn't become law. But what you have here, the reason it's important, it's laying the groundwork of the abolitionist movement in Congress that we don't want further expansion of slavery. Well, pro-slave states do want the expansion of slavery, again, for legislation. The next topic that you see there, the election of 1848. James K. Polk is going to face his fears here, and his fear is that he's going to face a war hero, and that's what happens. Zachary Taylor, who had been the hero of Buena Vista during the war with Mexico in 1847, is going to run for president, and he's going to win to become the 12th president of the United States, making James K. Polk a one-termer. And again, because America loves its war heroes, George Washington, Andrew Jackson, and now Zachary Taylor, William Henry Harrison. So 4 of the first 12 presidents, their fame is what they did in war and how they gained fame there, and America loves its heroes. Now, remember that the Treaty of Guadalupe-Hidalgo, that the United States acquired what is now the southwestern United States. And too bad for Mexico that just a few months after this treaty was signed, a gentleman walking in a place in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada Mountains in California, in a place called Sutter Mills, is going to see something very shiny in the creek there. And what he's going to find is find gold. And it's going to spark what we know today is the California gold rush. So if you want to know what topic to put there, Sutter's Mill is where gold is first found. It sparks the 49 gold rush in California. Hence, the San Francisco 49ers, 1849 gold rush. What's the color of the 49ers helmet? Gold. How about that? The NFL loves history too also. So people are going to get gold fever, and people are going to want to get rich, and they're going to want to make their way to California. And there's a couple of ways to get there. I go by overland, but no, there's no transcontinental railroad yet. So I'm going either in caravan or by wagon, and that's a very perilous fight because you're having to go through territory that is still dominated by indigenous peoples who are not fond of white people. They see them approach. So that's dangerous. or I could take a boat from the East Coast and go all the way around the tip of South America and come back up to the West Coast and land there. But that's a 6-week journey, very perilous also. Anytime you're going around the tip of South America, even today at Tierra del Fuego, it can be a perilous journey with storms down there. Or I could take a boat down to where present-day Panama is, unload all my stuff, cross the mountains and on the Isthmus of Panama, and go to the other side and get on a boat there. But again, a very laborious thing going through the jungles of Panama and the mountains there to get over to catch a boat up to the West Coast. So in 1848, there were 5,000 people living in California. In 1850, there are 500,000 people living in California. And little towns like San Francisco, which have been nothing, now become booming metropolises because there's a need that's served there. There are going to be very few people that get wealthy because they struck it rich. You'll have that. It's like the lottery winner. Someone's going to win, but it's at some point, but very few people do. It's the people that actually supplied the miners and the services needed for that are the ones that got rich. I'll give you an example. Gentlemen noticed that there were the miners. If you've ever panned for gold, you're down on your knees there and you got to run your pan and spin the pan in the river there, hoping that the gold is selling, the water will wash the lighter dirt away. Well, if I'm wearing these soft cotton pants, I'm going to keep tearing them up and I keep having to buy more cotton pants. And this guy was looking at this, what if I made a more durable pant? And he looked at tent fabric as that option and made pants out of tent fabric and then made knee patches made out of the same fabric. So that eventually, even if that wore out, I could take that patch, put it over that hole in the knee and keep the same pair of pants and not have to buy pants over and over again if I'm panning for gold. And that guy's name was Levi Strauss. And I'm going to guess that some of you have bought his product, denim pants or denim jeans, which is, again, that all came about from the 49 gold rush there. And so California, because of the gold that's coming out of the hills there, the federal government would love to get its hands on some of this gold, the taxes that are due, because California is just still a territory. But however, California has made it very clear we are not a slave state, and we have no intention of coming in as a slave state. But money trumps standards sometimes, and so Congress wants to get their hands on this. And so if you look at this next topic here, the Compromise of 1850, it's a list. I like lists, and on tests it's good to know these things. And so there are 5 things that the Compromise of 1850 does, and I would write these down. Okay? Our friend Henry Clay, author of the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Henry Clay, Speaker of the House, corrupt bargain of 1824. Henry Clay, who wants to be president. Henry Clay, who hates Andrew Jackson. That same Henry Clay is going to author the Compromise of 1850. And it has 5 points in it. Now, compromise means somebody's getting something and somebody's giving up something. And so you have abolitionists that are anti-slave, and then you have pro-slave states. And so I'm going to read this here. I'm going to tell you what's in it. And then you tell me who you think got the end of the better deal. So here they go. Point 1, as part of the compromise. There again, 5 points. Point 1, as part of this compromise, point 1, California would be allowed to enter the Union as a free state. Okay? California would be allowed to enter the Union as a free state. Now, who gets the benefit of that? Anti-slave people. Point 2, and this one's kind of silly, but point 2, and it's not silly for the people who haven't suffered, but it's window dressing. Point 2, slave trade and slave auctions would be illegal in the precincts of Washington, D.C. So there'll be no more slave trading. Slavery's still legal, but the buying and selling of slaves at auctions within the precincts of Washington, D.C. will be illegal. And I say that's silly because I can go right across the river, the Potomac River into Virginia, to Alexandria, Virginia, literally just 2 miles from the nation's capital, and I could buy a slave there if I wanted to, if that's what I wanted to do. But it's almost like, well, up here on Capitol Hill, we just don't want to see it. We don't want to see people being bought and sold, and that makes us feel better about ourselves here. And so, again, point for the anti-slave people. Point 3. Remember that when Texas was annexed in 1845, what Texas used to look like and what Texas is today is completely different. Texas used to go all the way up into what is now Wyoming. Albuquerque, New Mexico was in Texas. Denver was in Texas. The Oklahoma Panhandle, half of Kansas was in Texas, all the way up to the Arkansas River. And then all of Cheyenne, Wyoming was in Texas. But there was some disputes because the United States had acquired what is now the southwestern United States from the war with Mexico. There were border disputes between Texas and the United States government on where Texas ended and this new territory began. And this dispute had been going on for 5 years. So as part of this compromise, Texas, when they came into the Union in 1845, was $10 million in debt from its days as a republic. They were deeply in debt. And so as part of this agreement, Texas agrees to give up disputed land and additional territories to the U.S. government. In return, Texas would have its $10 million debt paid by the federal government. And so that's why Texas looks like it does today. And that's why the top of Texas, on the Oklahoma Panhandle, the top of Texas is the 36-degree 30-minute line, which fits in over here with Missouri and Arkansas, the 36-degree 30-minute line. Remember that as part of the compromise, slavery cannot exist above this line in the Louisiana Territory, but slavery can exist below this line in the Louisiana Territory. But now we have all this new territory that was acquired from the war with Mexico. What is now half of New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, and southern Colorado, which had formerly been part of Mexico, and before that Spain, is now United States territory. And the Missouri Compromise line does not apply to this territory. So what do? Well, as part of the compromise, point 4. So you've got point 3, Texas agrees to redraw its borders. Point 4, popular sovereignty will decide the slave question in territories acquired from the war with Mexico. And remember, we know what popular sovereignty is. We'll let the people of that territory vote and decide whether they want slavery or not. And we'll see how that works in Kansas. It doesn't work very well later on in 1855. But at this time, popular sovereignty will decide the slave question in territory acquired from the war with Mexico. And then point 5, the most controversial one of all, a new Fugitive Slave Act is passed. What this meant is prior to 1850, if a slave was able to get away, a runaway slave on the Underground Railroad, and was able to get into free territory, basically north of the Ohio River, or north of the Mason-Dixon line, which was the Pennsylvania-Maryland border. If they could get north of those lines, then they were in free territory, and they were free. And there were many people up in the north that, through good Christian faith and charity, wanted to help these people, educating them, getting them a job, teaching them a skill, feeding them, housing them, getting them clothes, all that charity do. And so this had been going on for a few decades, helping runaway slaves. Now, but the problem is with the passage of this bill is that the Fugitive Slave Act said that any slave that had run away and was living, let's say, in Boston, Massachusetts, was now a fugitive and could be brought back to justice without due process. Simply said, and this is what happened, bounty hunters came up north and grabbed black men off of the street or black women off of the street, arrested them, and took them immediately back down south without any type of hearing or trial. Hence the term fugitive. You are a fugitive from justice. Now, the game changer about this is that people up north saw these runaway slaves come, right? But they hadn't seen actual people in bondage. They saw these people and they'd escaped to freedom. But now people up north are seeing Southern bounty hunters grab people off the street, even black men who were freedmen, had never been slaves. They're being grabbed, they're being returned to an institution of slavery down south. This angers many, many people up north. It's like, who are you to come up here and grab these people? Or I'm helping them, or we think it's wrong. But here's the added caveat to that made it even worse. Even today, it is illegal to aid and abet a fugitive. If if you help somebody who's broken the law and you help them get away, you help facilitate their escape or help them hide, you can be charged with the crime of aiding and abetting a fugitive. And that's what this law did, that any white person or any person that helped a slave in their attempt to escape justice from the South, they call it justice, but in their fugitive status, they themselves could be thrown in jail. So if I'm a church and I'm a Christian, I'm in Boston, and I'm thinking like, hey, I'm helping this person who had escaped, again, aiding them, feeding them, educating them, and all these things because I think it's the right Christian thing to do, I now could be grabbed and taken away because of aiding and abetting a slave. So my question is, how do you think this was received at North? It wasn't received well at all. And again, this is one of the big sparks. This is the main spark that's going to put us on that fast slope towards civil war, because now slavery is becoming real for a lot of people at North. Not that they didn't think it was real, but they're seeing it. They're seeing the injustices of it. And they're also seeing, like, you're trying to force your Southern morals on me, which violate my Christian principles, which is, I think I should be able to help these people that have run away, because I think slavery is possible. We'll see here in the election of 1852. The last thing on the page there, July 9th, 1850. A mystery. Everybody loves a good mystery. I like a good mystery. Well, what happened here was on July 4th, 1850, Zachary Taylor, President of the United States, was going to attend a ceremony for the laying of the cornerstone of what we know today as the Washington Monument. Now, I'm assuming we all know what a cornerstone is. It's the block that everything else is built upon that it goes up. And so there's going to be the cornerstone laid for the Washington Monument. If you've been to Washington, D.C., which I know many of you have, it's a 10-minute walk from the White House to the Washington Monument. And that's what Zachary Taylor is going to do on this day. Now, it's a hot, humid day. Summertime in Virginia, it's hot and humid. It's humid here in Texas. It's a lot more humid in Virginia on the coast there when you're close to the water and the tidewaters of Virginia. And so it's going to be a hot, humid day. But before Zachary Taylor attends this ceremony, he's going to have a little delicacy. He's going to have a bowl of cherries and milk with cold milk poured over it with sugar sprinkled on it. And he's going to eat that. He's going to go to the dedication of the monument. He's going to attend the ceremonies. And then he's going to walk back to the White House. And he's going to this is July 4th, and he's going to get violently ill. And he's going to remain ill. And then 5 days later, on July 9th, 1850, Zachary Taylor will die in office. And for the second time in our nation's history, we have a president that has died in office. So we had William Henry Harrison in 1841 after giving a 2.5-hour sleep storm speech, and then he dies of pneumonia, and John Tyler becomes president. And again, what's interesting, there's nothing in our Constitution that says what the chain of command is. We won't get that until 1967 with the 25th Amendment, when we set up we have the 1940 Succession Act, but it won't become amended to the Constitution until 1967 on what happens if the president dies. We have that in order now. But back then, it was just the president had been becomes president. So with the death of Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore becomes the 13th president of the United States. Fast forward 138 years. It's 1988. And some doctors, just out of curiosity, were looking back over the death of this president. They've been looking at the death of other presidents, like William Henry Harrison. What happened to him? With Zachary Taylor, what happened to Warren G. Harding? Same thing. He dies suddenly in 1923 at a hotel in San Francisco. Franklin Roosevelt dies of a brain hemorrhage in 1945. But they were looking back at the medical records of these presidents that had died in office. And as they started looking at the notations that had been made by the White House physicians on what was happening to him, they said, something looks suspicious here. The conditions that Zachary Taylor was exhibiting were the conditions of somebody who had been poisoned, and specifically arsenic. Arsenic is a rat poison. It's tasteless, it's odorless, and if you ingest enough of it, it's lethal and it can kill you. But you can sprinkle it on food, or you can put it in liquid, and somebody ingests it, they're not going to taste it, or they're not going to smell it. But it's a lethal killer. And evidence was so overwhelming with this that they said, we think that Zachary Taylor didn't die of natural causes. We think that Zachary Taylor might have been murdered. And if he was murdered, who did it? Because the number one thing a cop asks or a detective when they're investigating this, okay, who would have motive to this? Who would have? And so I'm asking you, who do you think would have motive to have Zachary Taylor out of the way? Some of you might say Millard Fillmore, the vice president, and he would be the number one suspect. Well, what they do is that like they have enough evidence, they go to a judge and they get a court order and they exhume the body of Zachary Taylor. Now, Zachary Taylor was put into a crypt in a mausoleum. He wasn't put into the ground, but he was put into a vault, in a family vault. And so in 1988, they actually exhumed the body and they do a forensic autopsy on him again. Now, the description of it was that what was left was skeletal remains, hair and nails, and teeth and all that. So they actually took some hair follicles and fingernail clippings and some bone clippings also, and did analysis on them. And sure enough, there were small traces of arsenic that were found in these remains. Now, but based on what they found, it wasn't, in their eyes, a lethal amount. But after 138 years, some of the arsenic could have decayed. So even today, it was inconclusive, and you have a split camp. There's a lot of people that think that, yeah, well, how did the arsenic get there? That's not normal to have rat poison in your system unless somebody put it there. And most people don't voluntarily take, I want some rat poison for dinner. But there's other people who say, well, it could have been, there's, so the camp is split. There's still a mystery on it. Was Zachary Taylor? And so who did it? You can look it up if you want. It's an interesting tale, but in the end, the conclusions are inconclusive. So my internet connection was interrupting there a second. Let's see if it comes back. Please wait while we're trying to reconnect. I hope it's reconnecting. So give me just a second here. All right, we're back. Okay, that is a good place to stop today because tomorrow we'll continue with nativism, the election of 1852. But that gets us started here. I'd like to get through this week and early part of next week and then test on it and then get into the Civil War. So school's over. We have 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left to go till the 15th of May. But anyway, I hope all is well with you. I hope you did your reading because that's going to help and supplement this here. And we will look forward to seeing you guys again. I'll send another tape of this, and hopefully, heck, my dog is normally in here with me, but I guess she's had enough, and so she bailed on me here. But I'll try and get her here tomorrow, so she'll have to listen to the lecture. So with that, you guys have a good day. I hope all is well. Miss you, and we'll see you soon. Take care of yourself and your family.